All right. Thanks, everybody, so much for joining us today for another Talent Board Spring Forward with the Candies webinar. We've been doing this series throughout the spring, and we're down to our final two webinars, and really excited about today's topic, tackling the elephant boring job descriptions. We've got a great panel with us today that I'll introduce more fully in a minute. Jessica, Beth Ann, Jim, and Mari. Mari's going to help drive the conversation in just a bit. I'll introduce them more formally in just a second. What I wanted to do first, for all those that are on, is to talk a little bit about Talent Board. For those who aren't familiar with our organization, we're the first nonprofit research organization focused on the elevation and promotion of a quality candidate experience. For going into 8 years now, actually, we've been doing survey research every year with employers around the world, asking them what they're doing in recruitment and how they're improving candidate experience from pre-application all the way to onboarding. And then in turn, also them targeting a population of their own candidates, most of whom are those who didn't get the job at the end of the day, and asking for their feedback on their experience at that employer. And so there's lots of great benchmark data that employers get for participating from their candidates. It's a confidential and anonymous program for both employers and candidates. And for certain employers that have the highest positive candidate ratings in our research, we also give them awards every year, hence part of our namesake, the Candidate Experience Awards. The program is still open. And again, great benchmark data that you can get back, and there's still plenty of time to participate. And you can see on the screen there, you can go to thetalentboard.org to learn more about how to participate in our benchmark research program. Last year, we had about 300 companies participate globally, 220,000 candidate responses, and we are now inching towards 50,000 in just this 2018 year alone. So we're already starting to gain data from this year in the 2018 program. These were the North American winners. Again, the companies last year in North America that had the highest positive candidate ratings, companies big and small across the board. We've also got, these were our EMEA winners last year. And then lastly, the APAC winners from last year. And again, the program for 2018 is now open. And we couldn't do this without the support of our generous sponsors. Being a nonprofit organization, most of which is underwritten by these organizations. I'm sure that many of you work with some of these folks as well. I want to give them a shout out and a thanks. So what I'm going to do now is introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to turn things over to Mari Hannigan. So Beth Ann Weaver is the Global Recruiting and Staffing Manager at Eli Lilly. We've also got Jessica Masterson, the Manager of Employment Brand and Diversity Recruiting at Allstate. And we've got Jim Fox, a Recruitment and Human Resource Advisor from PeopleFox. And of course, Mari Hannigan, CEO of Spark, and she's also one of our generous supporting sponsors as well. So Mari, I'm going to turn the conversation over to you and put myself on mute.
Great, thank you, Kevin. And Kevin's going to advance slides for me, so we can start there. Before we start this presentation, there are just 3 quick things that caught my attention that I'm really excited about that I thought I'd share with all of you. These may seem off topic, but hang with me. The first one is the Maserati. There's a brand new Maserati out. It's got 10-way power heated seats. It's got 18 speakers. Incredible car. This car has just got me excited beyond belief. And I just think it's the neatest thing out there. Kevin, next slide. The other thing that I'm excited about these days, there is a new lamb sauce out. It's got some garlic spices, ginger, some lemon juice. It's really wonderful. I'd highly recommend you guys try this if you like lamb sauce. It's really wonderful. And Kevin, next slide. The other thing is there's a job at ADM, Archer Midland Daniels. And if you know the company, agribusiness, smart people, really interesting organization. There's an opportunity for a global talent acquisition lead there that if you're interested, I'd recommend you check out. Have I interested any of you? Are any of you ready to whip off your headsets or whatever and run out and go check out these opportunities? I'm going to guess not. And Kevin, if you'll go to the next slide, we'll talk about why not. Go ahead and start this. This is how you advertise a Maserati. And this is how you advertise lamb sauce. And this is how you advertise jobs. We're clearly missing something here. the marketing world has woken up and said, if you want to entice people, if you want to get them to take the next step, you need to do more than give them paragraphs of text. Yet this is how we go to the marketplace with all kinds of opportunities for professional entry-level people and so forth. So that's where we're talking. That's what we're talking about today. And don't mistake, Kevin, if you go to the next slide, we can take a look at the idea that, don't mistake for a minute, that we are selling these jobs. We are really, to a large degree, or at least trying to sell interest in these jobs. We may not be selling the jobs themselves, but we are trying to persuade people to pick up their heads and take a look at our opportunities. We have 3 states now that are at 2.6% unemployment, the lowest ever. There are 11 states that are at their lowest point since 1976, since the Bureau of Labor Statistics started keeping records. The company is essentially at full employment. That pretty much all the best potential employees have jobs. So what we need to do is convince them to stop, consider our opportunities, and leave what is usually a perfectly good job. And that takes some real persuasion. And we're going to talk about the primary tool that we use to do it. Now, one of the questions is it worth it? And Kevin, if you go to the next slide, I'm sure some of you are familiar with this. This study is a little bit dated now. It was, the Ladders actually did it back in 2013. They did some heat mapping of how people read, or didn't read as the case may be, job descriptions. And as you can see, anything red was looked at the longest, anything yellow was at least glanced at, anything that doesn't have any coloring over it wasn't even viewed. Candidates tend to go through, they spend less than a minute on job descriptions. They tend to read a title. They might look at some pull-out information, but the idea of a candidate reading from first word to last is very, very unlikely. And so with all the effort and energy that people are putting on this, one of the questions is, should we be doing this at all? And that's something that we'll talk to our panelists about. But Kevin, if you go to the next slide, there's an issue here, and again, this is going to be part of the conversation. I hope the conversation will extend beyond this webinar, which is just that the language adds to our problems. We use the phrase job description to refer to a whole lot of things. Let's for a moment accept that a job description is an internal document that's used by your compensation team, legal, compliance. It is the legal document that describes the job and outlines it for internal use. A lot of people use job posting to refer to that external marketing piece that's used to attract candidates. The problem there is that most ATSs generate a job posting page which is pulled from the job description. So for most organizations, their job posting is exactly the same as their job description. And there are tremendous battles going on between recruiters and recruitment marketing people who want to make this text much more candidate-centric, and the legal internal people who say, no, this is, really put together the way it's supposed to be put together and we can't tinker with this. People also use job ad, job profile to refer to this external marketing piece, but we don't even have agreement on the language. And there's one school of thought that says, let's leave the job descriptions alone. Job descriptions are legal documents. They belong internally. That's fine. Let's start over and do our outward bound content. And again, it's something we'll talk about, but we need to have clear and concise language about what we're talking about, and very possibly stop trying to rewrite job descriptions and start talking about writing job postings or whatever we call these things. All right, Kevin, if you will go to the next next slide. Let me just show you a couple of examples of people who have addressed this issue of the outward bound marketing content. And I'm going to go through these very quickly just to give you some examples. This is AT&T for a call center job. Assuming that's large enough on each of your screens to see, instead of trying to rewrite paragraphs of text, what AT&T did is they put in a couple of infographics. You can see the clock there with full-time may include nights and weekends. To the right of that is the compensation that's right up front because that's what candidates care about. They've put a graphic here on what makes a successful individual, and there's a video about the job itself. and they've just completely reimagined what their outbound content is all about. One might still call this a job description, but clearly something very different. And on the next slide, Kevin, if we can look at Booz Allen, has taken their job descriptions and rewritten them to talk about the challenge and how you build your career in this opportunity, but also added video of hiring managers, infographics on travel and workspace, and really enhanced what is the written text. And we're seeing a lot of people do this. On the next slide, you can see Comcast, who is leveraging the idea that everybody is seeing the job opportunity on some kind of electronic device. Everybody's either on their phone or on their laptop, and created the option to put in your home address and find out exactly how far your commute will be and what your commute might be by car, by public transportation, walking or biking. Just more information, different kind of information. Again, kind of getting out of that box of let us rewrite the job description to be more customer or more candidate friendly, and just putting whole new elements in there. And then lastly, Kevin, on the next slide, we'll just take a look for people who did stay focused on the job. Fidelity has gone through and rewritten all of their job descriptions, and the sections in their job descriptions are the expertise we're looking for, the purpose of your role, the skills you bring, the value you deliver, and how your work will impact the organization. So very conversational approach with candidates. So I'm not saying any one of these are right or wrong, just a couple of examples of what people are doing as they approach this whole topic. And some interesting and creative things here. With that, I'm going to go to my next slide and turn this over for a couple of minutes to Beth Ann, because Lily has been doing some really interesting things and a lot of effort and focus here. And as Beth Ann will very honestly tell you, they've had their successes and they've had their challenges. So Beth Ann, can you just share with the group where you are and how your journey of trying to make this information more compelling has gone?
I sure can. My name is Beth Ann Weaver, and I work for Eli Lilly and Company, or known out in the world as Lilly. And we're a pharmaceutical company, over 140 years old, and we help discover medicines that make individuals' lives better. Also, just a little plug here, we are a 2-year in a row Candy Award winner, which we're very proud of. And we have basically our job description. We've known for many years that we're too lengthy, wordy, and unappealing, and that another avenue that makes it difficult for recruiting is our business area actually owns the job descriptions. So we don't have a library or an area where we have access to. We have to wait for the hiring managers to actually post a job for us to be able to get their job descriptions. So basically, we had to identify a way to make an impact with the job descriptions that would be advertised in the external environment in a friendly manner. Since we're a regulated environment, some of our job descriptions are already ugly and too wordy, which doesn't help the situation either. So mid last year, we slowly began to make adjustments to our process, so there would be more efficient tools to revise our job descriptions. The first tool that we actually began to utilize is called Textio, and this tool assists us with rewriting our job descriptions for consistency, accuracy, and provides words that are gender neutral. What it does is once you put in your job description, it provides you with a score, and based upon that score, it'll let you know whether or not there's changes that need to be made and recommendations on what those words need to be changed to improve the overall score. So the score can go up to 100. And when we first started using the tool, just in a pilot, our job descriptions were ranking like at 20–30%. and you want them to be 90% and above. So just to give you a perspective of how poorly written our job descriptions were. How we put it in the process is the recruiters, during their intake call with the hiring manager, discusses the Textio tool and will make the appropriate revisions based upon the results of entering that data into the Textio field. The only disadvantage that we have received, or per the feedback, is that it can take up to 45 minutes to make the appropriate revisions. However, on average, the recruiters indicated it takes about 30 minutes, and it's well worth the time to put in because they have currently seen an extremely positive response to the updating of the job descriptions, as there has been a significant increase in the quality of the candidates on the requisitions.
And
right
Beth Ann,
now,
can I just jump in and say, you also had said that you were acronym happy, right?
We are so acronym happy, it's not even funny. And the problem was our hiring managers were putting those acronyms in our job descriptions. So thus, again, another problem. Because what acronym is, we know what it means, doesn't mean that that's what the external environment understands. You're correct, Maury. And then our hiring managers actually really enjoy, after they see the before and after results, and understand the impact that it has on attracting the quality of candidates that we're looking for. Another benefit to this tool is that they actually archive our job descriptions. So every time we do make an update, we now have a library that we can select from. So it's giving us more control of the job descriptions. And then the second tool that we created was called a job ad template. And what we discovered is we sort of needed an easy tool for our hiring managers to use, as well as provide them with options on how to create a job description in general, trying to get them away. Don't look at what you currently have. What does the job entail today? Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, a tool was identified that we could utilize through a vendor, but the cost was going to be way too much. So we ended up creating a tool via Word to assist anyone in writing the job ad. So basically what we do is provide job ad guidelines on what they need to do to get started, going anywhere from the best job title to post externally. Because what we were finding too is just because our job titles at Lilly don't match what other job titles and how we might attract others just by the title that's posted out there. Because we can say consultant, but it's not really a consultant job. It's just that's how they're titled here. And also how to use keywords that candidates would search for your job. So helping our hiring managers understand that keywords that are needed are put in their job description. So if anybody is searching for that, it will pull and find our job descriptions. And use several you and we statements to help personalize the job description and bold any words to diversify the text, as well as include engaging questions. So throughout this job template, there are 6 steps, and each step, it provides them with options of what they can choose from a specific company overview, since we have different areas that we focus on, to responsibilities, to basic qualifications, additional skills and preferences, additional information such as our exceptional work environment, so our Fortune 50 best companies for minorities, so a lot of the awards that we received. And can't forget, number 6 is our lovely compliance EEO statement, as well as any additional things. Like we also have fixed duration individuals that work here for up to 4 years that we put a statement in there as well. And we also include a link to Textio for a brief overview, so they're aware of when we are having the conversation about Textio and job descriptions, what that means. and the impact that it has on us finding talent that we need to fill their jobs. And then the third is we, end of last year, started looking at video job descriptions. And basically, I was told, hey, would love for you to start this project. There's no money involved, but we would like to have video job descriptions. So how can we make that happen? So a team was put together and worked with our social media and communications department. It has been a slow uptake. We're a very conservative company, so something of putting your picture out there and actually putting a 10, 15, up to 30-minute segment, or 30-second segment of what that job is or what the work environment looks like is a bit scary to our hiring managers. So slow to adapt to change, but we'll eventually get them comfortable, and it will take our recruiters, I feel, to get that motivation of the hiring manager or even someone on the team to be able to take that step of just doing a little video segment so we can attach it to our job ads.
Beth Ann, did you say 30-minute or 30 seconds?
No, I corrected myself. 30 seconds, no longer than 30 seconds.
My brain
we don't want a 30 minutes. We'll put them to sleep. Yeah, that would be way too long. Way too long. So those are some of the three areas that we focused on. We also looked at our website vendor who has had some ideas as well as how to spice up our job descriptions and utilize video and a map of mileage and territories and stuff like that. But since we don't provide our territory information, it sort of didn't, cause anyone to have, there was more anxiety than there was, yay, to have, that as an option.
Yeah, if you don't have the base data already in your ATS that can pull it, it just becomes one more thing for the recruiter to do, which obviously we all know our recruiters are just swamped and working as hard as they can. The last thing they want is more tasks. Wow.
Yeah, because I would say the challenges mainly are letting hiring managers know the importance of advertising. I mean, it's more, like you said, it's marketing more than it is words on a piece of paper, because individuals don't want to read a 10-page, because we have 10-page job descriptions. I mean, that's how ugly some of our job descriptions are. So how to get them to understand, you don't need all of that. You just need some really key pieces, and we're trying to help influence that the best that we can, even, not owning the job descriptions per se.
I suspect you just made everybody on this webinar really grateful that they don't have 10-page job descriptions. I think there was a collective grunt that went up there.
Yeah. Let's just say, who knew? But when you go into our scientific area,
yeah, you get scientists.
They like to have those long ones.
And just to wrap up, because I want to go into Jessica, but how far through the organization, how well adopted is this? Are you at 100% adoption, or are you still rolling it out? Just where are you in terms of getting toward what would be an end goal?
Yeah, I would say right now, some recruiters are better at utilizing Textio than others, just because of the time. But the ones who have put in the time are glad that they have, because of the impact that it has on the quality of their candidates. So I think the more we continue to use this and show the impact, the more that everyone is going to adopt and want to move forward.
Great.
With using Textio.
Could people go and look up a job at Lilly and see the result of the work, or would it be hit or miss in terms of if they just picked a random job to look at?
I would love to say it's 100%, but there is potentially the hit or miss in that regard. A lot of our clinical positions out there currently would be the ones that I would have confidence of indicating that they have been through Textio.
Great. Wonderful. All right, let me just ask you to hold for a second. Kevin, if you'd go to the next slide, I'd like to turn this over to Jessica just so she could also explain to the group what you guys have been doing, because you've been on a very different journey, but an equally fascinating one. So Jessica, could you just share with us?
Yeah, I would say broad brush we have some of the same journey points, but equally different challenges at times as well. So again, Allstate, we've been around for 85 years. We've served 16 million households, largely publicly held P&C insurer in America. So a lot of good things happening. We have our EVP, and what attracted me to Allstate is good work. The idea of doing interesting and impactful work, good life, having a good work-life balance and total rewards in good hands, the idea of working for a socially responsible corporation and service DNA. Those are all things that brought me to Allstate, but didn't necessarily pop from the job description that I was applying to. When I really connected with those things was in the first interview I had with who's my leader now, who is the hiring manager. So, things that we are looking at is how do we bring that out sooner? How do we arm talent acquisition and hiring managers to be better marketers of the Allstate brand and their departments and jobs? Some of the successes that we've had are, so here's where we do have some similar journey points. We've recently been doing some small tests with Textio and have had some success there in similarly shortening our job descriptions, getting rid of all the acronyms, making them more user-friendly. Another thing to think about, I think, that has both been a success and continues to be a challenge as you think about the complexity and ecosystem of ATS, CRM, job boards, but the need for brand flexibility. So for most of us that's working for medium to large organizations that are either being acquired or merged or acquiring companies, is the need for flexibility and potentially very distinctive brands under that umbrella and wanting to communicate that. I would say that the best success that we've had so far is more foundational. So whether it is creating templates for better marketing of our jobs, or whether it's putting on workshops for branding. I love that how you opened with the Maserati and the example of that. So I think really making a connection with folks in terms of that, the choice to embark on a job search and take a new job is definitely an emotional journey, and we need to connect with that. So I think, again, one of our greatest successes is really workshops that we've done on branding to really make the connection for folks that it's more than a job description, and this is one touch point in many. And we as talent acquisition professionals and hiring managers, and we have a really broad and engaged employee resource group, even those that attend events, et cetera. How can we all be better brand ambassadors?
Jessica, let me just ask you to expand. Doing workshops on branding, who gives them, who attends? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my team has done that, and really they're more around the employee value proposition and making a connection, a personal connection with that. So my team has put those on for talent acquisition and hiring teams as well. But we start to talk about the idea of, that good life, the idea we could list, I just love how you started it because it's so real for me. We could list a laundry list of benefits that they can expect from Allstate, or we can understand what's really important to that individual and really make a connection with them about how our offering would appeal to their needs and desires. So for instance, when we talk about, we have a really good PTO policy, and that is certainly something that we can talk about, but it's more impactful to really understand what's important to that individual and what that PTO will help enable them to do. So for instance, we have a really service-driven organization. DNA, serving the community, that's part of our DNA. So when I think about unlimited PTO, asking the question of what's important to folks and helping them understand what they can do with that extra time that would be paid by the company.
Yeah, very cool. And Jessica, could I ask you just to comment on one of the things? When we were talking earlier, you had mentioned that one of your goals was to give people enough information so they could opt in or opt out. And it's interesting to see someone focused on that more applications is not necessarily better. Can you just talk about how you've approached that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the data is out there in terms of how important an employer brand is to a candidate in terms of whether they will, and reputation of an employer in terms of how they are attracted to a job or not attracted. But, you know, the idea of if we're hiring for, I hate to say cultural fit, because I think sometimes that can be a disguised word, but I'll say values fit. If we're really hiring for values fit, we really pride ourselves on a set of what's called leadership principles. It might be called kind of behavioral principles somewhere else. But those are really important to us. And if that's what we're looking to, if that's what we're seeking for in the people that we're hiring, helping get ahead of that and not first addressing that in a behavioral event interview. So how do we help people say that sounds like me or is something I want to be part of, or that doesn't sound like me and that's not something I want to be part of, which is okay too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well, there are opportunities that are great. What about making great matches, not one size fits all? So that's fascinating. Anything else you want?
I think one of.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add some of the challenges. You know, I talked about that's both an opportunity in terms of mergers and acquisitions and, you know, a lot of brands under one umbrella, that brand flexibility. But, you know, it's also been a challenge in terms of technology, keeping up with that to allow us to have that brand flexibility across the ecosystem from ATS to CRM to job board, et cetera. So that's been a challenge. I think complexity. So when we think about just the world of work today, you know, a lot of our jobs didn't exist 5 years ago. Mine didn't exist a little more than 5 years ago. So in terms of realistic job preview, if a lot of these are a first time that we're opening this particular role at a new company, how do we even give them a realistic job preview? And then, of course, always alignment internally, you know, with legal and hiring managers. Again, I think that's the difference between the job profile and then a job description or a job ad. Budgets are always an issue for HR. You know, I also have a background in digital marketing. Marketing budgets were always much healthier than HR budgets in any organization. So creating that content at scale. And then I think for any sort of, I would imagine for any organization, if you start to look at the amount of work versus the resources you have, really auditing and caring for whatever sort of processes that you put in place to be double checking at scale is difficult. At any one time, we might have more than 700, close to 800 jobs open. So again, spot checking, auditing at scale is difficult sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And just to put some context on this complexity and different branding and so forth, you have businesses that aren't insurance businesses, correct? That are owned by Allstate, that are part of your organization?
Absolutely. So we have an organization called Arity that is definitely not an insurance business. It's around data, Internet of Things. We also have, I don't hire personally for, but under the Allstate umbrella, SquareTrade is more device insurance. And again, I think if you look at the direction of our company, if you look at any sort of our annual reports or discussions with our CEO, just talking about being a platform company and diversifying kind of what we do is going to continue for the future. So.
It's amazing. We talk to people all the time that are frustrated because they don't have a strong even company brand or aren't known, and then you get companies that have a strong company brand and are known, but the organization's evolved, and that almost becomes a liability to you when you're trying to recruit for other things. I think you look, I'm always amazed to hear that Domino's Pizza says they're not a food or restaurant business, they're a technology business. And I scratch my head at that one. But we're all kind of evolving and taking on different things. So trying to keep up and keep the employer brand accurate and flexible, as you said, is clearly an issue there. Wonderful. Let me just open this up to both of you and kind of start with this question. Do you try to differentiate between kind of the job description, the legal document, and for lack of better word right now, I'll just call it the job posting, the external, or are you trying to evolve those things together? Are you splitting them out completely separately? How are you handling those in your respective organizations? Beth Ann, let me just start with you.
Yeah, we're keeping the compliance aspect of it in our job ads, mainly focusing on the basic requirements. Since we are government regulated with OSTCP, we have to have certain things in our job descriptions, which are basic quals, and then additional preferences, as well as the EEO statement. So we are making sure that those are in there. They don't have to be as long as some of them were. So we're able to, get them a shortened version and also focus on the specific basic requirements instead of a lot of the additional preferences. Hiring managers like to put in the basic qualifications. Mm-hmm. So we are noticing an impact on that.
Wow. And Jessica, are you evolving them together? Are you separating them? How are you dealing with it?
At times it's taking different directions. So I think it's something that we are looking at both tracks and trying to stay together. So having better internal job descriptions as, again, the amount of jobs continues to grow, complexity of jobs continues to grow, but then the job descriptions. And I think, one thing for me, again, having worked in past in marketing, a past in recruiting, and now kind of taking those both together now, I think the idea of the job description, making it out as a job posting, so kind of all the things that you would need to be successful, to me it's like a painful reminder of HR's past limited role as a risk manager. So again, I think the more that we can do to help hiring managers and talent acquisition kind of understand how powerful their words and actions around the brand can be. And then I think also, again, I think making it easy for them. I know this is something that I heard earlier in the conversation, but our recruiters have a lot on their plate. So how do we make it, and our hiring managers as well? So how do we make it easier for them?
Yeah. Let me just share something that absolutely pulled me up short yesterday. There's a conversation going on over on Facebook about this. And Carrie Corbin at American Airlines, I thought she had a brilliant approach to her compliance people. And she said, if you remember the days when we used to advertise in newspapers, with 3 lines, we didn't try to put all of the compliance information in there. We understood that was a job ad, right? When you ran help wanted ads in the newspaper, you understood that was different than your job description. And that differentiation might also be valid today. But she has said that she has convinced the organization that the ATS should not be the repository for the job descriptions, that those are internal legal documents. They need to be what they are, but they should be housed elsewhere. And the ATS should hold candidate-centric information. And I thought, wow, I haven't heard anybody who's got an agreement to do that across the board. I also think it would scare people to death with the idea that your ATS might be emptied out of all the job descriptions as those were moved somewhere else for internal purposes. How would you guys react to having all the job descriptions just moved over to legal's database and you getting to start fresh?
This is Jessica. So how we're handling that today, again, I think it's 2 tracks of work. So our compensation team and legal, they have an important job to continuously update our job descriptions to be competitive. I mean, we have to look at the market and understand, are we being competitive? So having that job description is not unnecessary. It's a very important thing. How we're looking at it technically, our ATS does allow for a job description and job posting to be different. So I think they're both important. Again, to be competitive, to understand the market at all, I think you have to have kind of a set criteria, and you can always talk about more of what's required. But that job posting, having a shorter, our ATS and CRM that distributes from the ATS does allow us to do both.
And you're using SuccessFactors, am I correct, on your ATS?
Correct.
Yeah, great. And Beth Ann, how are you guys What would you think if somebody emptied out the entire ATS of all job descriptions?
Well, personally, going through audits, I wouldn't like that. However, because I'm compliance for our department as well. But I would say we have also talked about not having some compliance aspects in the job ads, but when they go in to apply, that the full job description would be there, that has the compliance obligations on that job description. So that way we're able to have one as an advertisement and then another, and it sounds very similar to what Jessica just indicated, because we also have a CRM that we do push out communications from that helps us advertise that I know don't have the compliance aspects of it. So just because we're trying to attract that talent. But I can see it potentially going that way. But the government, I think, also has to get up to the 21st century. Just saying, because even for immigration, you still have to post, put your job, advertise your job in a newspaper. So. Right.
Yep. Yeah. It's waiting for the government to catch up. We could be waiting a while.
I know. I have a feeling we will be.
That's right. Jim, anything that you want to add before we move on? You're going to talk just a little bit about when you are rewriting that actual text, some pointers there, but any thoughts on separating job descriptions from job ads or job postings?
Yeah, Mari, thanks. I think I'm echoing the sentiment, which is they're serving two different purposes, and the degree to which we try to force one document to do both or feel compelled for the sake of compliance to do so, we're putting ourselves at risk. And the degree to which candidate attraction shows up in that conversation, I think in this day and age, Mari, with your map and the current state of unemployment, I think it's as valid a document as people's concerns are around compliance.
Yep, absolutely. Let's hear it. Jim, let me turn this over to you for a few minutes just to talk about when you do look at those paragraphs of text, when you've got the written piece of whether it's the job posting or the job description. Do you want to just talk through a couple of the things that you were going to share with everyone?
Yeah, thanks, Mari. And Kevin, if you go to the next slide, you see I'm leaning on GIFs and GIFs. Although we talk about job descriptions versus job postings, we have conversations in my house regularly about whether this is a GIF or a GIF. But I'd like to highlight too this quote by Mark Twain because it really speaks to the conversation, which is the effort that is required to present a differentiated value to candidates, so that in Beth Ann's case, they're minimizing the basic qualifications for the role, and you may have candidates who look at the basic qualifications and think, I have those, and of course Beth Ann is wincing because in order to be successful in the role, they need to be able to do more than check those 4 boxes, and so it's incumbent upon us to take the time to write. Let's say to take the time first to understand the position requirements, the requirements of the team the person's coming into, and who the organization is, so that we can present them to candidates in a way that is compelling to the right candidates. And as Jessica said, would maybe encourage the wrong candidates to opt out. A real easy transition then to the bullets, that it's not like eHarmony, or it's not unlike eHarmony or a Match.com profile. Anybody who's been involved in those would say, yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that. And the reason that they did, or putting a description on care.com for a babysitter, is because they really cared about the types of people that they were going to be attracting to those roles. I'm hearing and seeing a lot now about loving their jobs and caring for coworkers. And I think this is a great place to start. But you get out of it what you put into it, and in that regards, the recruiter intake meetings, although everybody's busy, the time you invest in intake and launch meetings can help you attract those candidates. And hopefully, we would say at Beth Ann, when we were working together a number of years ago, we would say, let's fail fast. Allow the candidates who aren't right to not even start the process. The focus, as with eHarmony and Match.com, is on quality versus quantity. And so we need to be doing our part to making sure we're having that alignment. And there are tools that are available. Both Jessica and Beth Ann talked about Textio, and I'm sure everybody on the phone, nobody on the phone here on the panel works for Textio. LinkedIn also offers a new feature called How You Match that will encourage candidates to do some Q&A to assess the likelihood that they're going to be considered for the role. And then there's a reciprocal piece for recruiters to look at with regards to the candidates. And also Talvista is a new player in this space, launched to help drive alignment, the writing quality, and the bias elimination of our job postings. And then, of course, and Mari wouldn't say anything, but SparkStart offers a great strategy, and it's a real plug and play tool that can get managers front and center with candidates in an easy way to help candidates see what they're going to get into and who they're going to be working with. And that can speak volumes. Frankly, it speaks like a Maserati driving down a road that gets candidates to what I hope would be a well-crafted description. Kevin, if you go to the next page, you'll see some of the best practices and some of the commentary from folks, I think, speak to the value of this slide. And I'll direct your attention to the middle right of the page. Ali Hall is a Textio employee and also a blogger. And through their data, their research, she was able to define some best practices for job descriptions that can not only attract, but then convert the right candidates to the applicants for your roles. Keeping job descriptions within 300 to 700 words. And I'm smiling because I would say within those 300 to 700 words, you want to present the job in a compelling fashion. You also want to set it up to be kind of a mini career site, so that what they need to know about the company, they can see in that job description without going to somewhere else, although it's nice to have that in multiple places. And then thirdly, there is research that shows that candidates, and Kevin, the talent board data reflects the same, candidates want to know that they're going to be treated fairly and considered objectively for the role. So those EEO statements, well crafted, reflecting the organization and its authenticity, speaks to candidates and can help convert them, as does maintaining your sentence length, keeping bulleted content to about 1/3 of the job description. And then, as Beth Ann shared too, using those first and second person terms. It's all about we, and it's all about you in a one-to-one fashion, so the candidates can get a sense of a conversational tone, so that, you know, it's as if you're speaking to them, selling them on what the opportunity is. And then in the lower right there too, the idea of showing me, using videos and pictures or icons and graphics. I don't recommend GIFs or GIFs, although I'm a hypocrite because clearly I included them in the presentation. But this slide really gives you some ideas about what those templates can should look like, which Jessica and Beth Ann both shared as a best practice within their organization, to reflect the whole of the organization in addition to the needs of the role. So Kevin, if you would flip to my final slide. And guys, I love this picture because when I think of Mr. T, I don't necessarily think of a relationship of reciprocity. That's really what we're looking for. There was a talent board webinar like this one on May 15th. And in it, Eric Seidel from Shaker quoted CareerArc research that shows that candidates are spending 3 to 4 hours to apply to a job. And that's different than what Mari shared earlier, which is candidates are looking at a job ad for less than a minute. What you want to do is be able to get them to look at your job ad long enough that they're willing to invest the 3 to 4 hours to assess your company culture, figure out who they are, and then convert their resume, their application, into a marketing document that is going to be compelling enough to get you to turn around and look at them. But the challenge is with that we need to invest the time ourselves to put our best foot forward so that candidates are willing to invest that time, and we in turn have the opportunity to consider them for the role. I'll finish with this talent board snippet from the 2017 report, which came out recently. The best candidates have a newfound disdain, and Kevin, you know I love the word resentment. They have a newfound disdain or resentment for employers who don't know what they want until they see it. So it's incumbent upon us to figure that out before we get there. Companies that fail to deliver on the expectations of candidates and listen without hearing. So, imagine, if you would, a job description, Beth Ann, a 10-page job description or something that hasn't been looked at from the candidate's point of view as listening without hearing. We need to hold ourselves accountable to ourselves and to the candidates so that we can put our best foot forward and attract the kind of people to the company that are going to be successful there.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Let's go to some Q&A. One of the things that I would love it if people would share, obviously if you have questions for any of the panelists, but if folks want to just use the chat and reply to or share it with all, just tell us, what words are you using to describe the outbound content? Are you talking about, are you calling them job descriptions and using one phrase for both? Has anybody got any great language they'd like to recommend? Let me ask that, but then also in just general questions.
No, thanks, Mari. I've actually got I'm going to jump it really quick. We've still got about 5 minutes for questions, and this is for Beth Ann and Jessica. This is from Kevin. So what I'm curious about, again, just you touched on it throughout each of your presentations, but just can you iterate again briefly, once you got to the tipping point of we have to do something different with the way that we're managing our job descriptions internally, what was the first step that each of you took? Maybe whether that was to get internal buy-in, looking at a solution like Textio, what was the first step? Jessica, what about you first?
So I think I would say even before that was convincing others than my team that we needed to do something. So I think really making it visible for everybody of what is happening when you have 700 and something jobs open at any given time. It's real easy to kind of lose track of that as our senior leaders. So helping them kind of understand what that looked like in samples we were seeing, and helping them look at competitive to help really, that really kind of speaks to them, right? So again, just helping make it easier on folks in terms of making the business case was actually our first step. I think really, and then the second step was really kind of finding other folks that are think that this is important as you do. So when I think about when we present to some senior leaders in different parts of the business, you'd be surprised how many senior leaders that are also want the change in our job description. So helping enlist the help of those folks, as well as others around talent acquisition that understand that how important every candidate touch point is, to start from there, and then to be able to, again, make that case for change and get some other people on board.
Excellent. Thank you. Beth Ann, what about you?
I would say the tipping point, we received transition to a new CEO that stresses external benchmarking, and I feel that had a lot to do with the tipping point, as well as having a TA director who was fully supportive and identified a member on her team to actually, start looking at ways to improve our job descriptions. So I would say without, those two major items, we would probably still be using our old job descriptions. So
Excellent.
Nothing like good old peer pressure,
Right.
even at a corporation.
There you go. Absolutely. So, Mari, can I go ahead and share one of the questions that was asked from
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
So this question, do you use any video recorded interviewing tools, and how does it fit in your workflow? And we kind of already answered that, but why don't we answer that again?
Well, interesting. The question was about
Video
interviewing
Sorry,
as opposed to video up front as part of the candidate outreach. So it sounds like the question is about video interviewing.
This is Jessica. As it relates to interviewing, we do use video interviewing. We are a global organization. The talent acquisition team that I report into supports all of the U.S. So it's a lot of territory to cover. Often because we are a global organization, for instance, in our technology organization, you might have different team members that are not only not in Northbrook or Chicago, but they might be in Seattle, they might be in Northern Ireland or India. So video interviewing has become a very important component for us, and then also just to make it easier on candidates.
Excellent. I know there was a question that was asked in the chat that Beth Ann answered, and the question was, do recruiters shoot the job videos? And Beth Ann, you had answered, we have our hiring managers and their team members do the job videos. Campus recruiters or campus point captains would complete the job video description. Anything you want to add to that, or that's pretty much the gist?
That's pretty much it. I mean, we don't have our recruiters do it because we want somebody that really is involved, in that department or going to be on the interview team, stuff like that, versus the specific recruiter providing that information, because we want them to see the face of the individuals who they may be working with.
Excellent. Anybody else? I think that's all the questions, and we're about at the top of the hour too. So I definitely want to thank Mari for your moderation today. Great content, and of course the stories from Jessica and Beth Ann, what they're doing at their respective organizations, and then all the great recommendations and takeaways, Jim, that you shared too at the end of the webinar. So thank you all so very much for joining us today. We will be sending out the recording of today's webinar. It will be posted as well on our Talent Board YouTube channel. So thanks again, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.